بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، إن معه جبل خبز ونهر ماء. Dajjal will move with the resources of food and water under his control. فَيَأْمُرُ السَّمَاءَ فَتُمْطِرُ, and he will decide the distribution. So as people of Iman, immediately Amal wise we need to be prepared, Asbab wise we need to be prepared to take hold of ourselves and get our direction in Akhirat right. I'm going to Allah, I'm going to meet Allah, I'm accountable to my Allah. There are different stages based on my Iman and Amal will be the deciding factor. So a believer is always restless for his Akhirah. Abu Yazid used to say, ما زلت أقود نفسي إلى الله وهي تبكي. I continued controlling this nafs, forcing it in the right direction, and it was crying. This nafs still want to go. Like a rebellious child, if you want to take them to a place of good, a masjid, and they're rebellious, they oppose you, they start crying, I don't want to go. حتى سقتها وهي تضحك. But I continued making effort until it was smiling and happy, ready to go. So over time, this rebellious child, targheeb, effort, sohbat, company, etc. Eventually, now you tell the child, I'm going here, he's thrilled, he's happy. Why you waited so long? So the nafs is like that as well. Until we do not channel, we do not govern this nafs properly, this nafs will control us and we need to control it. Hasan used to say, min alamati i'radillah anil abd. The sign that Allah is unhappy with you is yaj'ala shughlahu fima la ya'nih. That a person gets engaged in those things which is useless, which is frivolous, which is not beneficial. So we need to check what is our relationship from Allah, our ta'alluq with Allah, our connection with Allah, as well as am I engaged in useless activities, am I engaged in activities which are not beneficial. So on all the platforms, from social media to the chats to the apps to television to satellite to DSTV to the different sporting forums, we need to check ourselves. Am I engaged in la ya'ani, anything that is not beneficial? Min alamati, a sign that my Allah is not happy with me. And that's why the Thanwi Rahimahullah used to say that a person who spends his time in these futile, these useless activities will not be inclined, will never incline towards the necessary items. What you have to do, you will not be doing that, but you'll be doing that what you shouldn't be doing. So you say this is a proven, mujarrab, experienced thought, a verified concept. When we engage in futile, then we will not be engaged in what is necessary. So the Mashaykh say, do what is necessary, you will leave that what is unnecessary. Ma'rufat ke tariqe se ma'rufat ko badalna. Faqawal Hazrat Maulana Hasan Rahimahullah, that if you want to rid yourself of evil, engage in good. So we find the nafs, shaitan, the advent of Dajjal, it's all a deception. And am I falling prey to this deception? And how do I avoid it? How can I make sure I'm not caught up in this? So they say that if you give shaitan your finger, he won't take your hand, he'll take your whole body. So we have to make sure that we don't get caught up in this planning, this plotting of shaitan. Say there was a priest who walked into a barber shop. After cutting his hair, he asked how much it will be. The barber said, no charge, I consider it a service to the Creator. So when the barber came to work next morning, he found 12 books, prayer books, and a thank you note from the priest at the front door. Then later day a police officer came in, walked in, same, had his hair cut. How much is it? No charge. I consider this a service to the community. Next morning he came outside the store, 12 donuts and a thank you note. The police officer. Then a politician walks in after he gets his hair cut. How much did it cost? The barber says, no charge. No charge at all. I consider it a service to the nation. The next morning he walks in, and in front of the barber shop there's 12 other ministers at the front door. There's 12 other ministers at the front door. So once you give in to shaitan, he doesn't give you space. So this system, which is this Dajjali system, like one example, the soybean industry. So the largest producer of soybeans in the world, which is the US, 87 million acres of American farmland has been dedicated to this farming, to this production, roughly larger than the state of Mexico. So 70% of the soybean goes to the feed of animals. Literally every burger, scrambled egg, stir fry, milk is in the American soybean farmers. So, and since this is the largest agricultural export in the US, it's part of the American economy. It is part of the American economy. So in 1980, when it came to federal patents, they covered live human-made microorganisms. This was the advent of the commercialization of living specimens, which was a way of profiteering from humanity. So basically companies could patent, they could trademark any GM organism, whether it's soybean, etc., and they would have a complete monopoly over their products, and they could charge what they wished. So because this model was economically viable, this incentive was in front of these corporations, it motivated them, it prompted them to develop GMOs. And the profits, we cannot even get into it. I'm not going to get into the figures, but this really ingrained it was entrenching this monopolistic power. So, and then go to just one company, Monsanto. 90% of all soybean seeds in the USA is controlled by them. Obviously subsidiary of Bayer, but Roundup, which is part of their product, it's a herbicide. So the farmers need the seed and they need the herbicide, and the Roundup Ready seeds is genetically resistant to this herbicide. So the farmers got no choice except to buy the seeds and the herbicides. Likewise, farmers now were forced, and it's part of the agreement when they supply you these products, you need to sign a contract and you promise never to save, resell any excess seeds. So you basically become enslaved year after year, harvest after harvest. And this monopoly is not specific. We're just using one example of the soybeans, but if you look at the seed production, then globally, from the seeds to the fruit to the vegetable to the fruit seeds, look at the cotton seed companies and who's controlling that. So they've got enough buying power to control countries, to control governments, to control presidents, and to make that whole country come on their feet. So we look at the initial 2010 Supreme Court case where there was a opposition, and this ruling, it limited corporate political donations. It was considered unconstitutional. So what happened was Monsanto started pouring millions and millions of dollars into lobbying, and they were donating both to the Republicans and the Democrats, and they wanted to promote this legislation which they wanted. So what happened is, in 2013, the fruits of their effort, the seeds, if we can call it, the seeds of their efforts, was that Obama signed into law the FAP, which is known as the Farmer Assurance Provision, or if we want to be blatant, the Monsanto Protection Bill. And this literally barred, it blocked any of the federal courts of halting, stopping any sale of genetically modified seeds, no matter what, despite, regardless of any potential health concerns, any damage to your health. And this is what they do. They throw millions into lobbying, into regulatory policies, which then eventually make them dominate the market. So if you look at the Gates Foundation again, they are the biggest funder of GM research on earth. So again, the rollout of GM crops in countries, pushing farmers into debt, causing irreversible environmental damage, using specific land concentration techniques, and this has increased the need for chemicals, the growth of superweeds, and in a specific report they've shown the harms of all of this. So yeah, as you're saying, here's an organization that's supposed to be saving humanity, but they're slaving. They're not saving, they're slaving humanity. And let's go into the recipients. So if you look at the AATF, which is the African Agricultural Technology Foundation, the Gates Foundation has given over $100 million. Then go into the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology. They've received $13 million. Queensland University for Technology, also working on GM, they've received grants, $14 million. Then go to the UK. So British plant scientists won a $10 million grant, was to develop GM cereal crops. So this was one of the largest single investments in GM just in the UK. So forget those countries, even in Africa now recently pushing, and they funded WIMA. So WIMA is the Water Efficient Maize for Africa program, a project which obviously Monsanto is part of it. They want to develop drought tolerant maize seeds. African countries, from South Africa to Uganda to Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique. And this project here is actually compromising the biosafety regulations. And this is how they're pushing it through governments in this name of saving the world, saving humanity. And the Gates Foundation is planning that around 20 million farmers to be planting these new seed varieties in Africa. So initially they started with South Africa until 2008, which was using GM technology, but now the rest of Africa is followed because they've got their fingers in each country. So Egypt, Burkina Faso, Sudan, etc., etc. and all crops from cotton to maize to sorghum, which is pushed by WEMA. So they get these bigger major bodies, buy their way in, and then get these bodies to push their agendas. So enslaving humanity, this handful of corporation, and let's just take like North America. 90% of US cropland is dedicated to only 3 commodities, and these are GMO crops: corn, cotton, and soy. Now from here, they are processed, and 80% of conventional processed foods have these ingredients. Can you imagine? 80% already. They've got their hands, they've got their fingers, they've got control of it. So this is a completely unbalanced control of the entire food resources. So besides that, anybody that's opposing these corporations, they harass farmers, they blackmail farmers, they anybody who goes outside this monopoly, this privatized industry, they get harassed. So they'll get legal letters, there will be intimidation, there will be sabotage, and they've got the teams of attorneys to make sure these people don't go ahead. Let's take another example: super bananas. So again, the Gates Foundation is funding super bananas in Uganda, and this was developed in Australia, and they said the world's population doesn't have vitamin A, shame, so they need a banana that will have the vitamin A, so they need to induce vitamin A into bananas, which would save the lives of hundreds of thousands of children who die from malnutrition, from this vitamin deficiency, na'udhu billah. So in Queensland University of Technology, obviously $7.6 million in funding came from you know who. So they've been growing these biofortified bananas, and they've said now they've cracked the formula. So these genes have been sent to Uganda, and obviously again, why did they choose Uganda? Because it is the staple diet of the country. Cooked bananas, East Africa, it is a staple diet. So this monopoly, this intellectual rights enslaves farmers. So let's say this is a staple diet of a country, and now you get every farmer to grow it, but the farmer has to pay 1,000 times the amount, which is the normal seeds. So, and what's the end result? Besides the control, the monopoly, the enslavement, we find farmers are going into debt, and that has increased the suicide rates of farmers as well. So let's take for example India. If we look at statistics, then around 74% of total suicide victims in India are farmers. That's 28 suicides every day. 28 suicides of farmers every day. So from 1995, around 296,000 farmers have committed suicide. 60% of the country's population is in the field of agriculture. So can you imagine daily 28 people every hour, almost every hour, one person in India is committing suicide, and he's a farmer. Then Modi passed some new legislation which is called protest, and it's increased the suicide rates as well. So the farmers globally, just in the protests recently, few hundred farmers died in the protest camps around Delhi. So how many committed suicide? How many were killed? Allahu Alam. Go to the US. So farmers there as well, have been committing suicide. So read the statistics. Australia, every 4 days a farmer dies of suicide. In UK, one farmer a week takes his own life. In France, every 2 days farmer commits suicide. So through these patents and this intellectual property, it's a capitalistic system which they are controlling. And even from the grants which the foundation has been given, from $669 million, we found that most of it, plus 75%, have gone to US-based organizations. So these are the corporations just going back in the same circle. So and they promote. The Gates Foundation does not say that they're pushing on GM, they're helping humanity, agriculture. So it's a big deception and a big doka. The amal for today, we said, was also is reading salat with jamaat, and be very specific as well that we make sure that we read salat with the jamaat, and also we read salah isha and fajr. Man salla subh fi jama'atin fahuwa fi dhimmatillah. Whoever reads salatul fajr with jama'ah in the masjid, he has procured the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa akhiru dawana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.